I love it. Isn't it pretty?
Yeah, it's a lot.
It just was so dim with that other one.
Yeah. Flip the box and see. Oh.
Bam! Let there be light!
Oh, yay! Look at this. Wow.
Hey everyone, it's Lisa from the blog farmhouseonboone.com, and today I'm going to give you all a full update on our Victorian farmhouse kitchen renovation. So it's been months since starting this renovation process. I don't even want to look back and see when we actually demoed this place and I shared the plans with you because it has been so long. But I do want to share with you kind of the whole process over the last 6 months, because although I've been pretty silent about it on here and over on Instagram, we have been working and thinking and dreaming and planning about this the entire time. So first, let's go into what we currently have, and then for any of you who want to stick around and hear all of the details, I'll go into kind of how we arrived at where we are currently and kind of what's gone wrong over this time frame and all of that. So first of all, for where we are, currently we have the dining room done, which I showed you in a recent video, so I won't go into that. I'll leave a link in the cards and down below so that you can check out the details on the dining room. Now in the main kitchen area, yesterday actually, this is new, the cabinets were installed for the main wall area. So we first have the refrigerator. We ended up going with a cabinet around that to kind of cover the side and not be seeing all of the ugly parts of the refrigerator. We have a large base cabinet with a door. We have a drawer stack. We have our vintage farmhouse sink with a shorter cabinet below it with 2 drawers and 2 doors. And then another drawer stack and our vintage stove. Now we did have the vintage stove fully restored. We originally found it on Facebook Marketplace and it needed some work, so it needed to be cleaned up. A lot of the pilot lights and the valve or the thermostat for the oven didn't work. So we do have, probably just for those of you who are interested in sort of like the budget aspect of this, about $1,000 in that stove. Now I'll probably do a separate video on this eventually for people who are interested in learning more about the vintage stove and how it works. But basically now it functions like a normal gas stove. I forgot to mention that in that $1,000. We also had to run a gas line, so that's also including paying for the plumber, paying for the stove, and all of the upkeep. So it is fully operational now after replacing the valve, which I had to go online and find an antique stove parts place online, and I was thinking that it probably wouldn't be the right piece. It ended up all working, and the guy that restored it came in and tested it at the different temperatures to make sure that it would hold steady and I could stay at 350 or whatever temperature I wanted. And then of course we have our island, which I wanted to look more like a work table than a traditional island with storage and something that would be visually heavy versus visually light. This space is a little bit small between the sink and the center beam. So I wanted to make sure that we had plenty of space for workspace because it is long this way between the door and the window, but not kind of impede the foot traffic and the way that the eye comes in and sees the sink and the cabinet. So we wanted this open, more of a work table with the turned legs. The same guy that built the cabinets for us, he did build the island. In less than a week, probably from when I filmed this, if not even really soon, we're going to be having the counters all installed, and then we can put the finishing touches on the shelving and the hardware and all the rest of the details. We've already had the person that does the template for the counters come out and measure, and so that is going to be happening very soon. So some of the things that went wrong through this process. Now on the back wall, we did end up going with beadboard. I don't think I mentioned that at all in the original plan. We ended up having a contractor come out and look at this project and to take down all of the old paneling that was up and replace it with drywall. It was going to be a little bit out of the budget. So instead, we decided to cover this half of the kitchen just with some vertical beadboard. Now, I wasn't sure if I would like how it looks whenever you look into the area over here where it goes from kitchen to kind of like the Eden dining room area when you see beadboard and no beadboard. But I actually end up loving it. And the reason for that is the ceiling is planked. So this is the original part of the house, and the ceiling in the kitchen isn't planked. So we already kind of have the mismatched finishes. And now whenever I look at this view here, I can see beadboard and planking, and it all kind of flows to me. It's gonna look a whole lot better whenever it's all trimmed out, which is happening next week. Now for the lighting, I have this beautiful fixture here above me. This is from Riverbend Home. I actually found this light online and then reached out to the company and told them how much I loved it, and they sent it to me, which I was so happy. Now, if you remember in any of our previous kitchen update videos, I had more of a school light, globe type light installed here above the island. Now, we lived with that in here for quite a while. I even had quite a few of you ask me about the light, so I know that you loved it, but it ended up looking too short for this area. So we have this super long island, and then we just had this one pendant light hanging out in the middle. So I saw this light on Riverbend Home, and I liked that it had 3 different bulbs without us having to cut into the ceiling and add more lights. Instead, we could just work off of the existing area, but then have it come down into 3. We just installed this today, and I love it. In the old configuration as well, it only provided 1 bulb of light there, which I really didn't think about. I kind of, just because it was a big light fixture, felt like it would add more light, but obviously because it's only 1 bulb, it didn't. This one provides so much more light, which is great because it gets dark right now around like 4:30. And so we quickly noticed that there wasn't enough light in the kitchen, and there isn't a whole lot of area for lighting in here. Oh, I love it. Isn't it pretty?
Get it, some love. 60 watt, you can put up to 100 watts. You can stick up to 100 watts in here.
Wow. Talk about light. That was my goal. Just was so dim with that other one.
Yeah. Flip it once and see. Oh.
Bam! Let there be light!
Oh, yay! Look at this. Wow.
So I wanted to add a lot of light with this particular light above the island, and I feel like this is the perfect choice. Now, the reason I chose this brass color is I have the sconces on the beadboard, and then I have my vintage chandelier here in the dining room area, and now they kind of all flow because they're all the same color. And I really like that I was able to do that with old and modern lighting, because the sconces are brand new, and then obviously this island light is brand new, but they all just kind of blend together in the same sort of style. I will be leaving a link in the description below for this light here from Riverbend Home, as well as all the sources in this kitchen. Now, of course, a lot of things are vintage finds and custom built, but there are a few things that I can link if you want to recreate sort of a similar look in your kitchen. Now, the sconces on the wall, those I will link as well. They were tricky because of the order that kitchens go together, which I had not thought about this at all before. This is all very new territory for me. I didn't think about the fact that I would have to know the placement of those lights well before everything was in this kitchen. So the electrician came in and he put spots for those lights before we put up the beadboard and before the fridge went in and the cabinets and everything. So I just kind of had to guess at a spot that I thought they should both go. And there was really no turning back, because after he added the area where they would go in, we put the beadboard up, we had to cut a hole in those spots, and there would be no patching it. So thankfully, I really love the placement. I ended up doing center on the window versus centered in the spots between the window and the wall, if that makes any sense at all. It's a different length, so I had to kind of make a choice. And I also had to make a choice on the height, and I really wasn't sure, because at the time I hadn't even ordered lights yet. I just knew that I wanted some kind of sconce in some kind of area, and thankfully I really like how they look. Now, I used to have them turned down because the ones that I chose here, they can go up or down, and I ended up liking the placement of them being faced up better than down. So this is how they're going to stay. I do believe that they'll still look okay when I add the shelving, but that'll of course be a variable, as well as the trim. So still around this large window because it's new. We did cut this window into the home. We have to add the rosettes that will match the windows in the front of the house, and then the 5.5-inch wide trim that is around all of the windows and doorways in this house. So I had the trim made by a local woodworking company. They just kind of used some knives to cut the same pattern that the rest of the house has. It's not exact, but it'll definitely look great. We're also doing a windowsill over the sink, which I cannot wait to do. I cannot wait to put ironstone pitcher full of flowers and all of that. Recently, when I went to an antique shop, I found the most perfect shelf. Now this is gonna go just above the stove. I'm thinking kind of maybe like 10 inches above the stove. Now I do have an unfortunate placement of light switch and outlet. Again, I had to decide this well before anything was in the kitchen, and I would probably choose to put it somewhere else, but there's probably not really a way because of the way the trim will come out from the window. So that's gonna sort of dictate the placement of the shelving unit, but we will work with it. The antique shelf I found is wooden. It has 3 shelves and some lovely brackets on the side. I think it'll be perfect. I wanted this kitchen to not be so pristine and crisp. I wanted the elements of clean, white, that kind of thing. Then I also wanted it to look fitting, to have a vintage stove and a sink that could probably stand to be resurfaced, and cast iron hanging on the walls, and kind of that mix of country, but still kind of classy. I wanted it to feel at home with a vintage shelf and an antique hutch. And so that's kind of the vibe I was going for all of those things to come together. Now where the refrigerator is, you might notice that there is a gap above the refrigerator and the cabinet. Now my contractor said the reason for that is there needs to be good ventilation and airflow, or it will put a strain on the refrigerator and it won't last very long. But I hate the gap so much. So the other day I was at an antique shop. My sisters and I, we went on a trip to Kansas City, and we were in an antique shop, and I found this part. I think it's from an old piano. And I grabbed it because I thought it would be perfect to put in that gap. It has some details that will allow airflow to come through, but still kind of shore up that gap so it doesn't look so out of place. Now I do plan to cut that down to size and paint it white, but I do think it'll be perfect to fill that gap, but also add a little bit of visual interest and allow air to come through. Now for the sink, I had big plans to use this beautiful faucet from Signature Hardware. I selected it many months ago and I still love it. But one thing, again, the details on these things are just kind of blowing my mind. I never thought about the distance that a faucet comes out when selecting faucets before. So it turned out that whenever we installed this, the faucet came out almost to the end of the sink, and it would be a splashing disaster and nightmare. Now it would work perfect with a modern day sink, but I did not calculate the depth difference of an old sink, so I had to end up replacing it with a different faucet, unfortunately. I do still like the next faucet, and I think it'll be a lot easier to wash dishes when we're not at the edge of the sink, but more in the middle, kind of where the drain is. Now for finishing touches, we're going to bring in this shelf like I mentioned. I'm of course going to have a blast filling that with spices and a few decorative things like some of my pretty vintage plates and pottery. And then on the left side of the window, I found an antique spice rack on my antique shopping adventures this weekend. I love the little enamel knobs that are on it. I don't exactly know what I'm going to put in this just yet because really spices will be better suited over close to the stove, and I want to put this in this area. So we'll see how it all pans out because I really need the trim in place, the counters on, and then I can start adding my pretty things. So I'm sure I'll put something in this. Maybe one of them will have baking soda, baking powder, maybe tea. I'm still not totally sure, but I do think it'll look really pretty. I've already shared with you a few of the issues we had with our stove. We thought it was gonna work perfectly. The day that we thought it was going to work, it turns out the thermostat was broken. We replaced that. We solved the issue with the gap that I hated about the refrigerator. Now, one more thing is when my contractor came to install the sink cabinet, which originally I told you guys I was going to use a vintage cabinet that I found at an antique shop. I was gung-ho on doing that. However, the dimensions were so wrong that he told me it would have been much easier just to build a new cabinet than to cut that one down to size. So that dream just didn't work out because the sink is so much narrower. And I really wanted it to look like its own piece, even though I wasn't going to be using something vintage. So the first time he came, it was too tall and it made the sink sit up basically right at the windowsill level. And I also didn't like that it was almost the same height as the other cabinets because I really wanted it to feel like its own piece. So he ended up rebuilding it. He dropped it down about 5 or 6 inches. And then we also raised it up from the bottom. So now it's taller than the other cabinets and quite a bit shorter so that it looks like a furniture piece, which was kind of the goal. I was going for more of the standalone look. Now I'm bringing that in more areas with the hutch and the stove being standalone and then the island looking more like a table. But that particular area, it's built into the cabinets, but I wanted to at least have the feel. So I'm also going to be bringing in some antique feet. Now I have a piece out in our entryway and it has these lovely, almost jigsaw made, it looks like, feet on it. And I want to create that same look here. So I'm thinking we're probably going to get a piece of wood and I'm going to draw something similar to what's on that piece out there. And then I'll have Luke cut it, we'll paint it white, and we'll put it under there to make that piece that the sink is sitting on look like it stands alone. So I cannot wait for next week when the counters come and when we can add all the hardware to the cabinets and we can put up the shelving, and then I can just start adding all my pretty things and the fun part happens. So be on the lookout. I'm thinking that this kitchen will all be done by Christmas. I might need another week or so to bring in some of those pretty things that I've collected and kind of style it. And then I'm hoping the first part of the year I will be sharing with you a full-blown reveal. I cannot wait till I am making my recipes on our antique stove, creating all my videos for you guys right here in this kitchen and not in my dining room and in the kitchen over here, but where it's supposed to be. I do feel like it is turning out just how I wanted it to turn out, even if it took probably 5 times longer. It's good because a lot of the little decisions along the way I was able to really think about and select what I really want. Now, if you're over on Instagram, you probably saw the whole dishwasher debacle. We were going to put in a panel ready dishwasher and make it look like faux drawers, but we had an issue where the cabinets weren't tall enough to add the panel. The panel was going to be shorter than the cabinets, which to me totally defeated the purpose because I wanted it to all look integrated and like we didn't actually have the dishwasher. Now, we haven't used a dishwasher in probably 10 years, and so I really wasn't worried about the dishwasher. I just liked the idea of having it there for the option. Now, once it wasn't going to work out, we took the panel ready dishwasher back to the store. I had the contractor just build the drawer cabinets and put the plumbing in to a dishwasher. So basically, if we would ever go to sell this house, someone could pull out that 24-inch drawer cabinet and put in a dishwasher without much effort. So the value on the house is still there, yet we can live with it kind of more how we prefer, which is just rinsing the dishes and hand washing them, and then we have that extra storage space with the drawer stack. I think I've shared with you just about every little thing that's happened along the way. Do plan to share that full reveal in January and hopefully a separate video all about the stove, so that if any of you are interested in what it's like cooking with a vintage gas stove. Now, one more thing I will say is we weren't able to use the original vintage knob on the stove. I still hope to find a replacement because I feel like the black one really stands out. But whenever the guy that was working on our stove installed the new thermostat valve, it goes the opposite way. So if you were going to 550, it would be like 250. It turned counterclockwise instead of clockwise. So anyways, we hopefully will find the right one that matches the stove, but I'm just happy to have a working stove and soon to be a working sink. I totally forgot to mention that we decided to put countertop, quartz countertop, underneath the sink as well. So the sink isn't plumbed in and it can't be until after the counters come. So we'll lift the sink, we'll add a strip in the front and a strip in the back, set it back down, then plumb it in. So currently still no sink. we're doing dishes in the bathroom, but having a working stove and oven is perfect. That's really all we have to have, as long as we have that sink just outside here to wash dishes in. All right, well, I hope that you enjoyed this little update. I cannot wait to share the full reveal and just show you how it looks when it's all done. Again, I'll leave links in the description below for this light from Riverbend Home, as well as a few of the other details that we have going on in this kitchen. If you are brand new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. I'll be sharing more of our Victorian farmhouse renovation. We've been here almost a year. We've fixed up a lot. I'm going to be sharing a full house tour around the year marked so that we can see where it came from when we first bought it and then a year later. Thank you so much for stopping by the farmhouse.